Joining us now to break down what this means for the economy is Dr. Joseph Phillips, Dean Emeritus and Professor of Economics at Seattle University. Dr. Phillips, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome, Joyce. Great to be with you.
Well, let's start with the economic takeaway from the Supreme Court decision. What is your takeaway?
Well, my takeaway is it's actually not very surprising that I think most people in the wake of when the case was argued in November kind of thought the court would lean that way. And so I'm sure the Trump administration has been planning for this decision, despite the comments that have been made by the president today. I don't really think it's a surprise to the administration. And so that's why they have a playbook ready to go in response.
Yeah, he's promising more tariffs. We'll get to that in a moment. As you know, a lot of companies pay billions in tariffs that may now be subject to a refund. How would that work? Because there's no clear explanation of how that should go forward.
No, there is no clarity on that. The Supreme Court didn't say anything about it. And what I suspect will happen is the administration will do everything it can to not have to rebate the tariffs back to the businesses. I think that in the end, they will end up having to do that, but it'll just take a number of years before the companies see those rebates.
The markets jumped almost immediately after the ruling. What do you think's driving that reaction?
Well, I think the market thought it was a positive move in terms of reducing tariff rates and therefore positive for the U.S. economy, because most economists think that the tariffs actually have a negative impact on the economy and business. So fewer tariffs, the better. But I think as time goes on, they'll see that the administration has a plan to maybe not get back to the level that was in place as of today, but get pretty close. And so that the overall level of tariffs in the economy is not going to change in a significant way once everything plays out.
So what does that mean for consumers then? Will we actually see lower prices on goods that were hit with tariffs, or do you think there will be very little change?
I'd expect to see very little change. I think the main thing that might happen is that future price increases might be less than they otherwise would have been. But I don't think businesses are going to start cutting prices as a result of this decision, in part because they're going to end up paying tariffs that are pretty close to what they're already paying. And, you know, this just continues the uncertainty around tariffs that they've had to deal with over the last year.
And as an economist, as you look at sort of the bigger picture, does all of this ruling in particular, make U.S. trade policy more stable? Does it highlight, in contrast, how much it swings with politics overall? What do you think?
No, I think it contributes to instability, but the instability isn't new. It's just a continuation of that instability because, you know, the administration is going to react in various ways to reassert tariffs. And at this juncture, people don't have clear vision as to what those are. That's just something that will play out over time, but it's not new because it's essentially been that way for the last year.
And I guess finally, what do you think is the perception globally with our international partners based on what we've seen today and sort of just all the changes around our economic policy?
Well, I think a lot of the partners, you know, anticipated this ruling. You know, like us in the U.S., they can listen to the hearings in November and kind of lean into it and figure out what's coming. And for them, I think it's already, over the last year, it's become very clear that U.S. policy is very volatile, hard to predict, and that is something that, you know, they're getting used to. Also getting used to the fact that, you know, the U.S. is no longer a champion for free trade, but is actually become a catalyst for putting in place more trade restrictions. So they're getting used to that. That's why you see, you know, different countries and different groups of countries getting together, figuring out their own trade deals that don't include the U.S. because the U.S. has just become a very unpredictable partner.
Dr. Joseph Phillips from Seattle University, we really appreciate you helping us to understand what this decision means for our economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce.